For more on John McCain, we're joined by CBS This Morning co-host John Dickerson. John, good morning.
Good morning, Anthony.
John, you spent a lot of time covering John McCain over the years. And to what degree is the service that's going to be happening this morning a reflection of what John McCain was all about?
Well, he authored it in a sense. I mean, he asked former President Bush and Obama to speak at his service, and it tells you two things, just those two voices. One, these are people against whom he ran bitter campaigns, and having covered both of them and heard the senator himself talk about his opponents, it is not, he said some things that you cannot repeat in polite company, and felt very, and he was a competitor, and so let's not mistake the way he fought those campaigns. When they were done, however, he tried his best to work with those two presidents, and he became close to both of them in very specific ways. So that's part of his legacy is, and anybody who tried to normalize relations with Vietnam, the country that had held him for 5.5 years, that's in keeping with that. But also it's a symbol, and it's very much in keeping with the famous speech he gave at the end of his career on the Senate floor, talking about regular order. And regular order is Democrats and Republicans fighting like heck, and then in the end trying to do the best thing for the country. And so the symbolism of this service is meant to match that message.
And to that point, John, he called himself an imperfect public servant, and his ability to change his mind really struck me. I want to go to that point because I remember the MLK holiday vote, and I remember that he was against it. And yet he turned around during the 2008 campaign saying, we can be slow as well to give greatness its due. A mistake I made, I was wrong, and eventually realized it. And I remind you that we can all be a little late sometimes in doing the right thing. And Dr. King understood this about his fellow Americans. What did you take about his ability to change on subjects?
Well, it reminds me a little bit of that Churchill quote, which I'll paraphrase about America, which is America always does the right thing. It just takes them a while to get around to doing it. And in this case, McCain, and this was true of the Confederate flag, too, in South Carolina, he said it was a symbol of heritage during the primary there to keep himself viable within the Republican ranks. After he lost the primary and the run for the presidency in 2000, he went back down and said, I was wrong. And this is something we don't see much in politics, which is politicians saying they're wrong. But also, this was a part of trying to maintain a standard. He believed in standards of personal conduct and also of institutional conduct, that you tried to keep the standard, and when you fell, you acknowledged it and then tried to hold that standard up again, as opposed to the political thing, which is usually to do whatever you please and then redefine the standard so that you don't have to explain yourself. He was very hard on himself as a politician in public and in private, and that's certainly part of his legacy.
John, you had an up-close look at him. You had a chance to cover him on the Straight Talk Express, and you had pretty unfettered access to him, from what I understand. I wonder if that exists today, or if there's a politician that you can think of that is as accessible as John McCain was to reporters.
It doesn't exist today, and it really didn't exist for McCain in 2008. That was one of the problems and challenges of his campaign. When you talk to the people who served with him and his fellow POWs, they said after the war, McCain was starving to learn as much as he could about the war and just make up for lost time. He retained that energy and that thrust for his entire life, and that's what covering him on the campaign was like. It was one long, rolling conversation, and it was all over the map, from literature to film to stories. And that energy is really at the heart of my recollections of that time period. And then also, on this somber day, it is very important to remember his wit. In his 5.5 years in captivity, he was the storyteller. They didn't have any other entertainment. And so he would tell stories. We talked to John Furr, one of his cellmates, who, on Christmas, he played Scrooge in their rendition of A Christmas Carol. That storytelling was at the heart of both his political success in the campaign and also what he used to do back there at the back of the bus.
All right, John Dickerson in Washington this morning for us. Thanks so much, John, for being with us.
Sure thing.
And stay with CBS News throughout the morning. In just about 20 minutes, this show will be abbreviated, and we will go to Washington for a special report on Senator McCain's memorial service at the National Cathedral.